We are live. Yep, that's what I read on the screen. So let's discuss. Hi, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. This is The Slate. We are a DraftKings show. We take you up until 5 o'clock. Well, no, it is 5 o'clock. We take you up until 6 o'clock. Sorry, 6 o'clock. Eastern time. Thank you. Lamarca,
no East Coast bias here.
It's such a crutch of mine on this show to be like, all right, here's the time. Here's the time we're going to go till. If you're on this West Coast, then it's this time. If you're on
it's
this
a tough
coast,
time week too, man. Like, daylight savings. It's all very complicated.
Yeah, like it's warranted, I think. Brendan Glasheen with two of our very fine DK Nation DraftKings contributors, Matt Lamarca and Gary and Thorne. It's a Tuesday show, which normally you end up getting pretty good NBA games. Like they try to dedicate those Tuesdays and Thursdays to the TNT big primetime matchups or at least marquee matchups. And of course, we don't have that today. So we're going to be heavy football on this show. Look ahead to week 10. Any final reactions to week 9? What's going on with the Colts? And just processing what they're doing. Every week they're in the news in terms of their coaching, their leadership, who the quarterback might be. So we'll do it all. So we'll take your comments in YouTube, Twitch, and we're live on Twitter. So join us every weekday. We come after that Madden Sim at 4, swing right over. We start up about 10 minutes after, and then we take it to the top of the hour before the night continues in Madden Simland. I guess I'll go to Lamarca first here. I was just looking at Lamarca's sportsbook pool picks, and this guy won't lose. It's like regression is always supposed to happen. And tell you, man, you got a pretty good read on this good old NFL. I'll tell you, Commanders hit, Seahawks hit, and they're all dogs, by the way. Lions hit, Falcons hit. On these underdogs, like when are the books going to have the proper correction when it comes to dogs and totals? Because unders and dogs, it's been the year for those two categories.
Well, I will say it is interesting. A lot of those, or at least 2 of those wins, I won on the hook. And depending on what time you took those lines, they went down to 3. The Falcons even went down to plus 2.5 before kickoff. So just kind of a good reminder about how important it is to get the best line. And, that's why I typically try to lock in bets as early as I can when I feel like it's a valuable number. Like, for example, this week, I locked in the Vikings almost right away at plus 7.5. Just because of the uncertainty with Josh Allen. I hate the Vikings. You know this. I've talked about the Vikings being a regression team for, I don't know, a month, 2 months, but I knew that with the uncertainty with Josh Allen, 7.5 was going to be the best number that we can get there. So it's a lot of that, right? Take it at 3.5, because if it does go to 3, like to me, the gamble is worse. If it goes from 3.5 to 4, I don't really care. But if it goes from 3.5 to 3, I don't want to miss that half a point.
Fair enough. Yeah, that was something we talked about last night. Pending possible Josh Allen news today, which I guess McDermott and company, they don't have to say anything at this point in terms of his status and how he is or is not progressing. So we were wondering with the number at 6.5 last night before Monday Night Football, would there be a chance it goes back to maybe 7? I don't know if you're getting 7.5 again, but yes, as of now, 5.5 on the DK Sportsbook. Gary, no basketball tonight, so you can really dive into the National Football League. What do you got as far as thoughts for either last week or going into this week?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a very entertaining slate of games. I think we'd all kind of looked forward to week 9, maybe a couple of weeks back, and was like, I don't know about that particular afternoon slate. Anytime you see those 2-game, like 4 p.m. Eastern slates, it's always a little disappointing. So maybe that was the overriding sort of thought process on that. But yeah, there's some really interesting lines out there right now. I mean, Vikings Bills, for the reasons you guys all just laid out, the health of Josh Allen. I keep staring at Colts Raiders as just like possibly the funniest game we'll get all season. Part of me thinks there's no possible way the Raiders don't win this game by 24, 30 points. I mean, they're literally going up against a terrible rookie quarterback who is going to have someone who has never called plays at the NFL level calling plays for him this weekend with an offensive line that can't block. Like that altogether seems like a really, really bad combination, but it's also the Raiders. Like, how do you trust the Raiders? But I think 6.5 is a nice number. Like, I do think as news continues to cycle in throughout the week, like we did find out the identity of their play caller today. I think as we continue to get closer and closer to kickoff and people still try to rationalize what exactly is happening with this, I think that Raiders number is going to move. So to get it under 7 right now feels like a very good time to jump in, because as I said, for as terrible and underwhelming as the Raiders have been this season, they have a play caller. They have an offensive line. Like I can't view what the Colts have done the last 72 hours in any other way than this is a team attempting to lose games to find their third franchise quarterback of the last 30 years. Because if it's not that, I have no idea what they're doing.
They are supposed to bring in pass game specialist, assistant quarterbacks coach, Parks Frazier.
That's the guy. Yeah.
Their new play caller. So it's weird saying Parks as a first name. Parks is their current. Yes, he is currently on their staff. Pardon me.
He was assistant to the head coach, I believe, in a very Dwight Schrute move. Yeah, it's just incredible stuff. I'm a Dolphins fan. Lamarca's a Jets fan. And to say that like we've never seen this level of like incompetence in an organization for a 72-hour period, that's saying something.
This reeks of recent hires in pro sports, though, too. Baseball's an easy one. Guys who work in TV.
Baseball's totally different, though. I think we can all.
I understand. I just meant like the logistics.
Sure, but like baseball managers are like more than a figurehead than anything else. Especially now with how like involved the front office is. Like you're just a PR guy. Like keep the players happy. Have a good relationship with the front office and the analytics team. That's occasionally you'll have to make like a pitching move. Head coach for a football team, like, oh man, like I was just listening to Zach Kiefer talk about this. He writes for the Colts for the Athletic.
Okay,
and just like Saturday doesn't even know the names of the other coaches on the staff. Like he's gonna have to introduce. It's not even just introducing yourself to a team; it's introducing yourself to the coaches. Like this is unprecedented. It's insanity.
True. And it's mid-season, right? It's mid-season. Yeah. It's not like they have a whole camp at least to go through. In the immediate, yes, being in season is not comparable to anything else. Having no experience and then getting thrown into this, that is unprecedented. Lamar.
And even like I'm not sure how the other, like obviously every other coach on this roster that has head coaching experience doesn't exactly have like a shining resume, but like I just can't get past how you would feel if you're like Gus Bradley and now you're being asked to help Jeff Saturday get ready for this game. Like anyone who's ever worked a job where you feel like you've been disrespected, like this is the ultimate sign of disrespect. So like, I just have such a hard time piecing together how the Colts even function as an NFL team, just on a basic level on Sunday. So yeah, I guess I'm locking in Raiders minus 6.5.
Yeah, it's like when they put Julian Edlow with me on Madden. I go, why does this guy my analyst? Like this guy sucks.
Exactly. Right.
Like, all right. That was mean. No, it wasn't. But Jules is Jules.
He's not watching anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. John Fox is on this staff too.
Sure.
I was just looking at their staff. I'm like, oh, okay. Who else they got? Gus Bradley, I knew. John Fox, senior assistant.
They've got one of their coordinators was like it's not NFL head coaching experience, but he was like a head coach in the CFL for like 2 different stints. They've got guys who've been head coaches on college teams. Yeah, like it's nuts. Like anyone, pick anyone, put them in a hat, draw one.
Hey,
I don't know.
When an elite coaching talent like Jeff Saturday is out there, you got to scoop them up. You got to scoop them up before the rest of the league gets smart to it.
That's a great way of asking Lamarca. Are you going to take this ugly dog in Indianapolis at plus 6.5?
I would say very doubtful at this point. I think if anything, I'm more inclined to do like Garion says and get it at 6.5 and just hope that the dysfunction in Indy is as high as we expect it to be. Because I do agree that it probably gets to 7 at some point. So I think that the value, if you're looking to bet it now, is with grabbing the Raiders. But that said, I don't know if I necessarily want to bet the Raiders laying a full touchdown. Like they are probably the most Jekyll and Hyde team in the league, right? Some weeks they show up and they look like they can beat the Chiefs, and other weeks it's, they can't put a single point on the board. So they are maddening. Not the type of team I want to lay a touchdown with. But I do think if you're looking for pure number value, they're probably the play right now.
Okay. Coming up for the Colts, and a lot of folks, the discussion around this feels like Saturday is here as a placeholder if they're trying to tank and not win games. You go to Vegas, home against Philly. This is fun. They play on Monday Night Football. So Saturday gets to coach with his former network broadcasting the game. Home against the Steelers, at Dallas, at Minnesota, Chargers at home, at the Giants. And this is not an easy schedule.
Let's be honest. If their goal is to tank, they didn't need to do all of this. They just need to have Sam Ellinger drop back and throw the ball 40 times a game.
This is egregious. I would even say so much as the Dolphins got docked a first-round draft pick for trying to pay their coach $100,000 per loss. This might be a more egregious attempt to tank. I think the Colts should lose their first. Now that I'm talking it out in my head, the Colts should lose their first-round pick in next year's draft and should be ineligible to draft the quarterback they're wanting to draft with these tactics.
So they're done. Colts are done. You don't give them a sniff at all with this guy at all?
No, they're terrible. They're already bad.
No, sadly, I think the Titans, and I don't think the Titans are that particularly good, but they've pretty much got that division wrapped up. They have an identity, which I think is more than any other team in that division can say, right? They're going to run the ball. They're going to play good defense for the most part. It's very hard to see them losing. We talked about this earlier this year, right? Like Naeem Hines lamenting sort of the fact that the Colts have to go through this whole process every year while the Titans are just a rock, right? Yeah. And Mike Vrabel, he instills his identity into his team. And, they gave Kansas City a run for their money on Monday night with a backup quarterback, or Sunday night. So
and quarterback's a loose term.
I'm sorry?
And quarterback's a loose term, yeah.
Yeah, Marka, exactly. I remember you were on the show at one point. Jeff was doing the show. We talked about this Hines quote. That was a month ago. And I said, this ain't good.
Well, I think that's even like a defensive Frank Reich sort of thing where you're like, let's remember this guy's had a different starting quarterback every year he's been the coach of the Colts across 5 seasons. And still put together like a pretty good record.
And they just have gotten worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. I do blame Frank Reich a little bit for the collapse last year. I mean,
the Wentz stuff, you kind of have to lay at his feet.
When you, the Wentz stuff for sure. But when it's, they all they have to do is beat the Jaguars and they make the playoffs last year and they just choked. This year, I just don't think their team is any good.
Okay. Very good. Well, that's the state of the Colts, and feels as if they're going to be certainly in the mix for one of those college quarterbacks coming out. It's supposed to be a better quarterback draft. Then again,
we need it badly. We need it badly because we have not had a ton of success with young quarterbacks entering this league in the last few years.
Well, I was just going to say
some
that
of these older guys are aging out.
Yeah,
it's not looking all that pretty.
Last 2 years, last 2 drafts. Pickett and Willis, not as much expectation, first and second round picks respectively. But that 2021 quarterback class with the 5 quarterbacks in the first round, Justin Fields is coming on.
Oh, that looks good. He's the last great hope for that class.
Justin Fields coming on, setting that record, 178 yards, the single game best in NFL history from a quarterback.
And
Mike Vick.
I'll just say quickly about that game, so often, just your baseline DFS sort of principles about what matchups could be good for a scrambling quarterback. You often dive into, okay, which defenses play man and which play zone concepts more often, because it's obviously so much easier for a quarterback to scramble against man-to-man defense, because once you pass that defensive line, no one is turned to face you.
Open season.
You've got running lanes. Mm-hmm. That 61-yard touchdown was against zone. His athleticism on that play was phenomenal. And the Dolphins defense is terrible, granted, but that was just such a stunning play. I mean, he still has some concerns about whether or not he can, make accurate passes and maybe some decision-making stuff in the passing game, but wow, if he just decides to like really kind of hone in on this running element of his game, and maybe become the closest thing to Cam Newton we've seen in some time, because obviously like Lamar is a different type of quarterback, and his skill set is utilized differently, but Justin Fields can be that bruiser that Cam Newton was that we really haven't had.
And the Bears have
him, basically a full year to realize that he should be running more.
Yeah. I think probably less him and more just the Bears.
Talk about poor coaching, right? Who was the genius that walked into the Chicago facility and was like, this Fields kid, maybe we let him run a little bit more, huh?
maybe Frank Reich ends up there.
Look, I think any team that needs an offensive coordinator, like Frank Reich's a great hire.
Thank you. I think that's a great pivot. As if we're going to get on the Colts for not handling it well, and Frank Reich got the raw end of the deal, that could be a great landing spot to get the quarterback situation right. Then again, what they've been doing now, they have turned a bit of a corner, finding more as they peel away his some hidden traits that, well, maybe they weren't so hidden in college. They appear to be pretty good. And the Bears, they have the Packers to thank for how they looked the other day, because instead of being longer favorites, they are short favorites this week at home, -2.5 against the Lions. A lot of money coming in on Chicago. That's one of the most bet public sides early in the week. Are we willing to take a stab at this, or are we worried about the Lions offense keeping up? This could be a high scoring game with the total being set at 48.5.
My initial lean would be towards the Lions. I'd prefer to get them at 3. We'll see if we get a 3 again at some point. But anytime you have two bad teams, and despite Justin Fields playing better, the Bears are still a bad football team. Like anytime you have two bad teams, I think it almost always makes sense to grab the points. So if I can get the full field goal, especially with Dan Campbell's track record as an underdog, he has historically been pretty darn good at covering the spread, even though his team hasn't won very many football games. I would probably be willing to roll with the Lions if I'm getting a field goal.
I would even say too, like, I know this isn't a matchup that you would historically assign a lot of points. Like this is a very old school NFC North divisional opponent thing, but this kind of has Lions Seahawks vibes to me. I mean, both of these defenses, the Bears obviously now down their two best defensive players coming into the season in Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith. The Lions with statistically the worst defense in the league. I mean, yes, they're both going to try to establish the run, and that could lead to some longer drives and some time-consuming drives, but I think this total's a couple points too low considering just how bad both these defenses are. Like, I do think we get over 50 points in this game, so I would pretty heavily lean towards the over.
Yep, that's one of the highest totals on the board this week. The other, we just scrolled by it, Jaguars Chiefs at 50.5. Gary, I think this Dolphins Browns game is compelling because Tua has found his way into the MVP conversation with this Josh Allen news. The line movement on Tua to be the MVP of the league has been stunning, but not all that stunning when you consider the news and the opponents the Dolphins have had the last few weeks. He has feasted and taken advantage. This offense, you hit on their defense not being very good, but this offense has been really fun to watch. Like Mike McDaniel has got a ton of toys to work with, and they're all clicking.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is kind of funny how like the NFL awards narrative sort of works. Like Tua is an MVP candidate almost solely because he's a quarterback.
And
like he's not really an MVP candidate.
I know, but like the reason he's top 6 on the board even is like because
the board doesn't lie. Okay, I'm just reading the board. This is not a take.
Stare at the board. Don't make me point at the board. But like Tyreek Hill being the odds-on favorite for Offensive Player of the Year is much more appropriate. Is he 4th? Oh my goodness.
Mahomes, Hurts, Allen, Tua.
That's
terrible line.
It's look, terrible. He leads the NFL in EPA per dropback. Like he leads the NFL in almost virtually every single offensive stat. Like it's crazy.
And look, he was plus 8,000 last Friday.
He shouldn't be MVP. I'm just going to put that out there as a Dolphins fan.
Okay, he won't be, but
he won't be either.
I'm highlighting that he's at the top of the board.
Yes.
Okay.
But
so
I'm just saying, like,
about anything.
It's Tyreek Hill. Like Tyreek Hill is if receivers were, I know they put into the like stipulation for the voting that receivers are not allowed to receive MVP votes. That's unfortunate for Tyreek Hill. But yeah, like if this award were actually not just best quarterback, Tyreek Hill would definitely be, he'd have better odds than Tua for MVP. Let's just say that. I think Tyreek Hill at plus 300. I don't know if there's value on that anymore. I guess 3-1's fine, but really, I think at this point, what you're betting against for Tyreek Hill to win this award is it's 3-1. Does Tyreek Hill play 17 games? Because if he plays 17 games, he's going over 2,000 yards, and he will win this award.
Justin Jefferson. I mean, I don't really count the quarterbacks here unless Lamar and the Ravens
that
record.
Would be my concern with Tyreek Hill is
games played.
No. I think Garion laid out a good case for him, but like, what if we have Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts both putting in, MVP caliber seasons for good football teams, and folks decide, okay, I'm going to make Josh Allen my MVP because I think he's the best player in football, but I'm going to give Jalen Hurts my vote for offensive player of the year.
Well, again, these awards make no sense. That's why it's so hard to try to figure this out.
If
if an offensive player wins MVP, how does he not automatically win offensive player of the year?
Of course.
So yeah, I guess that's the case. I think in that same vein, though, I do think there's this weird thing where you now kind of have writers and voters being like, okay, MVP is quarterbacks. An offensive player of the year can be a quarterback, obviously, but if there's a standout positional player, I almost feel like there's more inclination to give it to that guy, right?
You're 100% right, because Cooper Kupp won it last year, Derrick Henry the year previously, and then Michael Thomas before that. So I do think you might be onto something. I don't think I want to bet Tyreek Hill at 3-1, but it is kind of turning into the offensive MVP for non-quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And you mentioned games played. It makes me think about this guy right here. If they keep winning, does Saquon Barkley have a legitimate case as well as a long shot play compared to some of these other guys who are already hurt? Chubb isn't hurt, but he shares a backfield still with Hunt. If Hunt was traded, I would be curious what Chubb's numbers would be in terms of his odds, but Hunt, of course, did not get moved. Cooper Kupp's banged up, but playing, and he's still phenomenal.
Yeah, I might lean Derrick Henry if I was looking to go a little further down. The guy's workload of late has just been insane. He's got 5 straight 100-yard games, one of which was against Houston, who he has rushed for 200-plus yards in 3 straight. He plays them again, by the way. And when that happens, I think we should all just lock that in for DFS and multiple touchdown props, whatever the yards prop is, take the over. Like, they can't stop him. And as we've seen, Mike Vrabel has no problem giving this guy the ball 30 times a game.
Yeah, that was some of the best audio I think we've heard on the sideline.
Yeah, they can't tackle Derek.
Yeah, they know what's coming. They can't tackle Derek. Barkley is interesting though, Glash, I will say, because we've talked about this a lot from like a DFS capacity, but that like bell cow back, that whole narrative is really different than it was even like 5 years ago. Yep. And right now, Barkley is so far ahead of every other running back in terms of his offensive snap share. And maybe, again, that's, if we talk about Tyreek Hill injuries being a possibility, I think Saquon Barkley, obviously, just because of volume and because of his injury history, that would be a concern as well. But there is just a case to be made that he finishes this season with so many more touches than any other player, that maybe if the Giants do win 11 games or win 12 games somehow, that people are going to try and find a way to reward that team with an award. That might just be coach.
Henry's got more touches, by the way.
Oh, does he? Okay. Well, there we go.
But yeah, it's all workload.
Tennessee hasn't had their bye yet though, right?
No, they have in week 6.
Have.
Oh, right. Okay. They did.
Mike Vrabel, 5-0 in his career off the bye against the spread. That's how I remember that. Well, and also for the Giants, they got Texans, Lions next 2 at home.
Okay. So. Good get right spots for Saquon.
Right. Well, get right spot. And then, assuming even if they don't win those games, he in all likelihood is going to have a great time against those 2 defenses. So some line movement would be expected, I would think, should he come out of there healthy. Then again, they could really blow the doors off those teams. If they are for real, that we all think they are, or if people don't think they're real, then they won't be. But if they are for real, maybe Saquon's out of the game after 3 quarters in these games.
I don't know if we're ever going to find out if the Giants are real. I'm just going to put that out there. I think like
there are a lot of teams like that. The Vikings too are another one, I think.
I'll give the Vikings a little bit more credit, but I just mean like the Giants, there's a very good chance, like I said, they win like 10, 11 games this season. And I think even if they do that, I'm never going to be like, that was a good football team. Like,
we'll get a better sense on the Giants because they have to play the Eagles twice and the Cowboys once still.
But you know what I mean? Like they could lose all 3 of those games and still be like 10-7 and make the playoffs. And people be like, wow, what a great season for the Giants. I'm like, yeah, but I still don't think they were good. Good season. I don't think they were good though.
Yeah, but they probably thought they weren't going to be any good either. That's what I would argue. The Vikings are kind of supposed to be good. They've been trying to be good. They've been trying to build towards something to overtake Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. Like you invest in the quarterback position the way you have in Kirk Cousins, even though it's insane guarantee money they gave him. They put pieces around him. They go out and get TJ Hawkinson. They've got some stars on that defense. Like they're supposed to be there. The Giants, this was supposed to be a process. You know,
sure.
Right? They're in a really weird spot now because you declined the 5th-year option on Daniel Jones. If he leads you to the playoffs, what do you do?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's how they could trap themselves.
Do you bring him back?
Yep.
Because you're playing yourself out of, the hope, I think, or at least the plan was to have a bad year and draft a quarterback. That's looking less and less likely. You've also got Saquon Barkley. Do you pay him? Do you franchise tag him? It's going to be a very weird offseason for the Giants to see sort of what direction they ultimately decide they want to head in.
It is such a delicate situation when you come off of not only the rookie quarterback deal, but also if you have not necessarily a veteran, but someone who's on the cusp of being veteran status. We just saw this with the Colts. A lot of folks just a couple of years ago, Colts are like the next thing. They can be the team to knock off the Kansas City or the New England when New England had Brady. Like that's where we're at now, though, with this position. You've got to be really careful how you pick and choose to spend your money. Because if you get it wrong, I mean, we haven't seen Deshaun Watson yet with the Browns, but that blew up in their face for stuff off the field. But when you make that choice, you better get it right. So far, so good for the Dolphins. Tua's working out.
Well, they haven't paid anybody yet, though. Like they haven't paid Tua.
Yep.
That's the whole reason they're able to do this is they've got 2 more years of really too cheap Tua.
Yep. Oh man, it's something. Like Pete Carroll has nailed it. Like the transition from Russ to Geno has been phenomenal. But who saw that coming?
Not me. I'll tell you
Pete
that.
Carroll. I think that was about it.
Las Vegas, meaning Vegas, like the people that bookmakers. They haven't understood this team either. Like they're a dog again this week in Germany against the Bucks, who still haven't figured it out on offense.
This is like the perfect storm, though. This is a team that has been like disrespected by the books for most of the season versus a team that, regardless of what they do, will always need to be at least a little respected because that's how public they are. So
I got a parlay this week, Bucks money line and Tom Brady coming home with a new German wife.
There it is.
Can't find that as of right now. I've been looking very carefully.
He did clearly dye his hair like a darker shade of brown this week. So it's almost like he's getting ready to maybe hit some German nightclubs.
Oh yeah, baby.
He is a beautiful
Need to
man.
give it a week to let that set in a little bit, so it looks a little more natural.
Did not expect to be talking about Tom Brady's hair shade on this show.
Well, you're
Listen,
here.
We're full service analysts, man.
Full service.
Full
Wonderful
service.
Great. Okay, we've been kind of pouncing around here, but I love it. It's good fodder. What other games do we like, LaMarca?
I think just if you want to talk about a interesting game or an interesting line,
Yep.
the Packers, right? They're 5.5-point home underdogs against the Cowboys, or 5-point home underdogs. Like,
longest.
are they just done? Do we need to just stick a fork in them at this point? I mean, obviously they're not making the playoffs, right? But it's like, it's still just hard to say, okay, I've got Aaron Rodgers and I can get almost a touchdown. Like, it's tough, man. I did it against the Bills. They were getting 10.5. They were down by 17 for most of the game, and Rodgers snuck it in the back door at the end. Can he do it again against Dallas? I don't know.
And I mean, if you look at it,
home dog of his career, by the way.
Yeah,
+5.
It makes sense. And if you look at that game against the Lions, and this is like a very simplified statistical way to look at a game, and I understand why people like roll their eyes. But between the 20s, the Packers were very good in that game. Like, red zone turnover rate is such a sort of like flippant statistic. Like, that could turn on its head in an instant. So I would say they're not nearly as bad as the team we saw last weekend against the Lions. But at the same time, like, when Tua goes into Detroit and throws for 400 yards, and then Aaron Rodgers throws 3 interceptions, like, you start going like, what is going on? Like, this is clearly something is a little bit off here. And I think one thing that
like 7 dudes in walking boots now.
Yeah, like but look, like, Rodgers, something weird happened on that final play in London. Like, he hurt his hand. Like, we know he had a thumb injury, and it still seems like that thumb is affecting him. And kind of like what you were saying, Glass, with like, where is this team going? What are they doing? Like, if I could somehow bet that they lose like 2 of their next 3 games, and then we find out Rodgers is going to have surgery on his thumb, like, because I think that's the question right now. If you're a Packers fan, is like, what is the version of this team look like when you've thrown up the white flag? Because you just signed Rodgers to that huge contract. His dead cap hit next season, if you try to release him or something like that, which they're not going to do because this cap hit is ridiculous. It's almost $100 million. Like, you want to see what Jordan Love looks like in a lost season. I think that
might be the way to salvage this season.
Yeah.
Is let Jordan Love play, and maybe he's better than expected, and then you can flip him in the offseason or something, or at least if he's bad, then he's bad.
Yeah. Like, I think you need an answer on Jordan Love. So I would say, like, if I could somehow find a line of Aaron Rodgers has thumb surgery before the end of December, I would bet the yes on that.
What is with you two? Like, Brady dyeing his hair.
We want to be Johnny Avello. We want to be out here making lines.
I'm not saying Rodgers is going to get surgery. I'm just saying it wouldn't shock me if they channel the page out of the Oklahoma City playbook and, shut down Rodgers the same way that certain teams are going to shut down players in the NBA this season.
All right. Here's what we're doing today. I love it. I mean, I love the enthusiasm. It's fantastic. Yeah, there's still a few games out of that. I mean, who could the Packers even top? Like, San Fran feels like they're going to find a way to get in. The Rams
they have to probably right. It's
the conference is so down though. I just that's what I would counter with, right?
It's not though, because you've got 2 definite playoff teams in the NFC East, right?
I think 3.
Yeah, with the way that the Giants are playing, it might be 3, or at least the fact that their record is.
Well, there you go. That takes up 2 wild cards, so it's a 1 spot race.
So then you got to go out to the NFC West. Can we get San Francisco and Seattle, or San Francisco and Los Angeles? Can Green Bay pass 2 of those teams? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, you guys are just throwing me for a loop with the Brady thoughts and Rodgers' thumb surgery. And what did you say about Aaron? What was the other thing you said? You said something else. You bet on what? What was the Garion? What did you say again?
With Rodgers? I was just saying, I would bet he's going to have thumb surgery. Like, they're going to look for an excuse to play Jordan Love at some point.
Okay. Jordan Love stinks.
But we have to know that for sure.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? To be fair, maybe he's just good if he gets thrown into a real game. He did do that. Well, he did play last year, right? In a real game.
I'm going to say if Rodgers can't make these weapons work, I doubt Jordan Love's ability to.
And that was with Devontae Adams last year when Jordan Love was not. Yeah. It was last year, right? Jordan Love played last year against the Niners in a game, and they scored.
He had a COVID game, I think, in 2020, right?
Yeah, he's played and it hasn't looked good, but he hasn't gotten extended chances. I would still be curious to see him play like for a 5-week stretch or something like that.
Yeah. Any last thoughts before we go?
Yeah. All the folks out there in the United States, get out there and vote today, baby. Do your due diligence. Gary, and you get a pass because you're up in Canada.
I voted in our municipal election 2 weeks ago, so I'm trying to do
No
my
one
part.
cares. No one
What do
cares.
you got left? 2 hours? Or when do the polls close? 7 or 8?
Might possibly even later than 8:00. I think they're open for a while.
Okay. Yeah. Go vote.
And we got no NBA tonight, so there's no excuse. Get out there and do it.
You had a quick look ahead spot for tomorrow in the NBA. Lines are out.
I do not.
That a boy. That was it was a trap. I was testing you.
Sometimes the best bet you make is the one you don't make, Clash.
Hair dye and thumb surgery. The ones that we definitely couldn't make because they're not there.
Hey, we've got sway.
Don't
Those
forget
lines might
German
pop up.
wives.
On that note, we're going to go. Great work, guys. Gary and Thor, Matt LaMarca, find their coverage at DK Nation, which is our DraftKings platform for all write-ups, analysis, and breakdown of all things pro sports and college sports too. For LaMarca, Garian, also Tom behind the scenes, Eamon, Brendan Glasheen, you all have a great Tuesday night. I echo LaMarca's statement, and we'll see you again here tomorrow. The Sweat live at 11 a.m. Good night.